asks his disciples, "Who do people say I am?" And you, as his disciples. Now, African Christians, who do you say I am? That is Christ. Is asking us this question as African. Who do you African Christians say that Christ is? This is what African Christologists have tried to provide an answer. It is not so much to replace the traditional theological reflection or models we have on who Christ is, but the African response has what we call a catechetical value. What will help Africans to understand actually the mystery of Jesus Christ. So it is the pedagogical aspect of the African Christology that interests us, and that is where the African theologians are going. Otherwise, if we continue to use the model of Christology developed in other parts of the world, like in the Western world, that means that who Christ is for the Africans will continue to hang on the air. It will not be rooted on African culture. And our Christianity in Africa will not be African Christianity, not until it is rooted in our culture. We practice the Christian religion within the African context in the African culture. That is the infiltration of Christology in Africa is what African Christology is all about. Yeah, so who is Christ for us Africans? What is the African model of discussing who Christ is, of talking of Christ? Who do you African Christians say I am? If Christ is asking us that question today. So theologians have helped us to provide some answers on that. And we have to recognize that African Christology is the most developed aspect of African infiltration theology. And there is a special model that is more famous, well developed systematically by African theologians when we are talking about African Christology. And that is the African ancestral Christology. The theologians are saying that role our ancestors played, the mediatory role our ancestors played in African traditional religion, in linking the visible world and with the invisible world, mediating between the living members of their family with the living God, with the spring God in the spiritual world. So that is what they are talking about when they say that Christ is our ancestor. So that instead of going through the mediation of the ancestors in the past, we now have Christ as our mediator. Excellent. So they have used various models to describe this ancestorship of Christ. The first to discuss it, use his model is Charles Nyamiti. His own is very, very famous because he was the first person to give a systematic presentation of the ancestral Christology from an African perspective. Nyamiti called Christ our brother ancestor. That Christ is our brother ancestor. As our brother ancestor, he has established us in the Trinitarian fatherhood, sonship, and the communion of the spirits, the love of God, through his incarnation and the Paschal mysteries. And Christ has come to fulfill all those functions our ancestors were fulfilling for us in our traditional religion in Africa. He has perfected it. In other words, God chose the African model of mediation in revealing his Son to humankind. And that is the serious argument our theologians, African Christologists are making in this sense of African Christology. So he called Christ our brother ancestor. This our brother ancestor has come to establish a new relationship or perfect that mediation our ancestors were doing, and now has established us in the fatherhood of God's love, sending the Son, and through the Son, he's sending the Holy Spirit. So that through that communion of love between the Father and the Son, which Christ, our brother ancestor, has established us, we now have a mediator, who is Christ himself. So the Nyamiti's Christology is more of Trinitarian base, because Nyamiti is also a dogmatician. We shall come back to Nyamiti, but the second person that is a kind of perfection of Nyamiti's destiny that came after Nyamiti's destiny is the Congolese theologian Benezet Bujo. Nyamiti, I said, is from Tanzania. Unfortunately, he left us some months ago, Charles Nyamiti. Yes, that great African theologian, we have lost him, but he's now in the glory of God. So, the second author of African ancestral Christology that is famous is that of Benezet Bujo. And Benezet Bujo is a kind of perfection of the first model which Nyamiti has proposed of ancestral Christology. Bujo did not place the Christ, our brother ancestor, on the level of biological relationship, as if to say Christ is one of the ordinary human ancestors. No. Bujo called Christ the ancestor, the proto-ancestor, while Nyamiti called him our brother ancestor. And we know what ancestor means in the African understanding of ancestor. Before you become an ancestor, when one dies, you must have died as an old man who has lived a very exemplary life, and eventually has children that will venerate that person when the person dies. So after the death, the members of the family and the extended family begin to venerate that person, to invoke that person whenever they are meeting, because we call them, John Beatty called ancestors the living dead. In every meeting in African destiny, we invoke the ancestors. They come and they participate in every aspect of the family life, as if to say their life, the existence after death, is to protect that of their members of their family who are still living in flesh. So that is why Nyamiti called them brother ancestor. But Bujo called Christ ancestor, proto-ancestor, the ancestor per excellence. So Bujo did not place the Christ ancestor on the same biological level, as if Christ ancestor is any of these ordinary human beings who are human ancestors. No. But Christ, the ancestor, was established a new relationship between us and God, and he has also instituted a new community of brothers and sisters, and that is the church. Bujo places much emphasis on the flow of the Paschal mystery grace that comes to us from the Paschal mystery, which especially the Eucharist, into which the church is established. For Bujo, the Eucharist is not just an object of contemplation, but it is the source of our Christian life, because it is from there that Christ, our proto-ancestor, our ancestor per excellence, feeds us, nourishes us, accompanies us. And so that now we have this new community of brothers and sisters established by the ancestorship of our proto-ancestor, or our ancestor per excellence, who is Jesus Christ. So in such a way that Bujo's as Christology, ancestral Christology, has implication also for the life of the members of the Christian community, who now must live as brothers and sisters. And so Bujo also uses that also to talk about Christ is the first brothers of all the creation, the new creation. So the first have to reason. So he goes to the teaching of Paul, how Paul described Christ as the first to rise from the dead, the first to rise from the dead. So that in that case now we see that this Christ, the ancestor, establishes us in the love of God the Father, God the Son himself, and the communion from the love, the communion that exists between the Father and the Son in the Spirit. So it has consequences on how we must live as brothers and sisters in love, in brotherhood, because we are now in a new family established by our proto-ancestor, who is Christ himself, who is the first of all who have risen from the dead. And that is how he presents his own. There's also another author of African Christology that even developed a special kind of faith, and that is Anselm Sanon, Monsignor Bishop Anselm Sanon from Burkina Faso. He called Christ the master of initiation. That Christ has come as our ancestor who has initiated us into the foyer, into the family of his Father, in the communion of the Spirit. And so that uses the African initiation rites, how people are being initiated, adolescents are initiated into the adulthood, into the society, and what the initiation means in the African context, what the children that undergo initiation, during that period of initiation, they are being initiated into the mystery of creation, into the mystery of life. They are separated from the community, and then they are initiated stories of the creation of the world, and many other mythologies are told them, and after that, they are proclaimed as adults. They are initiated into the society. They are no longer to be treated as children. So Monsignor Sanon used that aspect and called Christ our master of initiation. So the Christ, the ancestor, has initiated us into the foyer, to the family of his father. There's another one, is a Nigerian Christologist, Christmanus. He's a Biblist. Christmanus calls Christ the African king. Christ is the African king. And he tries to avoid the type of kingship, the African kings, these dictators, and many other things we're having now, the abuse of power of this. But Christ, the African king that has established us through his mystery Pascal into the kingdom of the Father. So Christ is our king because he has inaugurated a new kingdom by his incarnation, by his life, by his passion, by his crucifixion, death, resurrection, and glorification. So he becomes our king. And so these are fundamental aspects of African Christianity. There's also John Pobe from Ghana, the same Africa. He calls Christ our Nana, the Akan word for ancestor, Nana. Christ is our Nana. But they all develop in this way, that is our mediator. This aspect, Christological aspect of Christ as our ancestor, has a special catechetical role to play in introducing the mystery of Christ our people. So the African theologians are not saying that this ancestral Christology is going to replace the traditional models we inherited from Western theology. No. But they are thinking of a way in which the Africans can enter into models we can use to introduce this deep mystery of our faith in Jesus Christ to the African Christians, because it is easier for the African Christians to understand this model of mediation. The role the ancestors played in the traditional religion now has gotten its fulfillment in the mystery of Christ, perfected in the mystery of Christ. And it is not just the ancestor to my family alone, but Christ our ancestor is a universal ancestor that introduces us into the family of God, which I will speak later on when we enter into African ecclesiology of the church as family of God. So it transcends my nuclear family. It transcends also my extended family. It transcends also a village, a town. So it embraces the universal church. It embraces the entire humanity. When we speak of Christ as our ancestor, it talks about the relationship, promoting a better relationship, dialogue, tolerance between brothers and sisters who can trace their ancestorship to the Son of God, and therefore to the fatherhood of God, to the sonship of God, to the pneumatology, the spirit in which the world was created, and the spirit that the spirit of the Redeemer, Jesus Christ, who is now our ancestor per excellence, our proto-ancestor. So I think we can stop here today, and next time maybe we take any of these authors, their any of them, their ancestral Christologies, and develop more on that gradually. So thank you for your attention, and good night.